Chapter 1. Stop waiting for company, the myth of the right time. How many ideas have you buried in the graveyard of someday? Think back to 6 months ago, or perhaps a year. You had a spark. You had a vision for a project, a fitness goal, or a career shift. But when the time came to take the first step, you looked to your left and you looked to your right. You waited for a friend to say, "I'll do it with you." You waited for a partner to validate the risk. You waited for a mentor to hold your hand through the uncertainty. And because they weren't ready, you decided that you weren't ready either. This is the most common tragedy in the world. Most dreams don't die because of a lack of talent, a lack of money, or a lack of opportunity. They die because of a lack of company. We have been conditioned to believe that life is a team sport, and while collaboration has its place, the start is almost always a solo flight. The harsh reality of the world is this: if you wait for company, you will wait forever. The psychological trap of the safety net. Why do we wait? It's not because we are lazy. It's because the human brain is wired for social survival. Thousands of years ago, being alone meant being vulnerable to predators. Being part of a tribe meant safety. Today, that instinct hasn't left us. It has just evolved into a psychological crutch. We think that if we have a partner, the risk is halved. We think that if someone else is watching, we will be more motivated. But the opposite is often true. When you wait for a partner, you aren't looking for help. You are looking for an excuse. If they quit, you can quit. If they don't show up, you have a reason to stay on the couch. By waiting for company, you are giving someone else the remote control to your destiny. You are saying, "My progress is dependent on your mood, your schedule, and your level of ambition." That is a dangerous way to live. The power of the lone beginner. Look at the history of every industry-shaking success. When Jeff Bezos started Amazon, he wasn't surrounded by a cheering crowd of believers. He was in a garage with a few wooden doors turned into desks. When J.K. Rowling was writing the first pages of Harry Potter, she wasn't in a writer's retreat surrounded by supportive peers. She was a single mother in a cafe, writing in the margins of her life, completely alone. When an elite athlete begins their journey, it starts with a workout at 4 a.m. when the world is silent. There is no coach yelling yet. There are no fans. There is just the sound of their own breathing and the cold air. Every success story you admire has a lonely chapter. It is the chapter where they had to decide that the goal was more important than the comfort of a crowd. They understood that the early stage of progress is lonely, uncertain, and quiet. If you are waiting for someone to believe in you before you start, you have the order backward. The world only believes in those who have already moved. Belief is a reaction to your movement, not a requirement for it. Movement creates momentum. There is a law in physics that applies perfectly to human ambition. Objects in motion stay in motion. The hardest part of any journey is the transition from 0 to 1. This is where most people fail because they try to make that transition while carrying the weight of other people's opinions or schedules. When you start alone, you develop a rare and powerful trait: initiative. Initiative is the ability to see what needs to be done and do it without being prompted. Most people never build this muscle because they are always waiting for a go signal from their social circle. When you decide to go to the gym alone, to study that new language alone, or to build that website alone, you are training your brain to rely on its own internal engine. You stop being a passenger in your own life and you become the driver. When you are the driver, you don't need to check if everyone else is ready to leave. You just start the car. The freedom of the solo path. There is a hidden beauty in starting alone. When you are by yourself, you can pivot faster. You don't have to hold a meeting to change your mind. You don't have to manage someone else's ego or insecurity. You can fail in private, learn the lesson, and try again before anyone even realizes you made a mistake. This is the training ground for leadership. You cannot lead others until you have proven you can lead yourself. And you cannot lead yourself if you are constantly looking over your shoulder to see if someone is following. The next time you feel that hesitation, that "I wish I had someone to do this with" feeling, recognize it for what it is. It's a shadow. It's an illusion of safety that is actually a cage. Conclusion: the first step. The path to your highest self is a narrow one. It isn't built for a crowd, it is built for a pioneer. Stop checking your phone for a text back. Stop waiting for the perfect co-founder. Stop looking for a workout buddy who is as dedicated as you are. They may come later, or they may not. It doesn't matter. Your life is happening right now. The clock is ticking, and it doesn't pause for your friends to catch up. Repeat this to yourself every morning until it is etched into your soul. If you wait for company, you will wait forever. Take the step. Do it today. Do it alone. The strength you gain in the solitude of the beginning will be the very thing that carries you to the finish line. Chapter 2. The crowd weakens your focus. The magnetic pull of the average. There is a profound, almost invisible force that governs human behavior, the law of social gravity. Just as the earth pulls everything toward its center, a group of people naturally pulls every individual toward the center of its collective energy. In physics, this is called entropy. In life, it is called the average. When you are surrounded by a crowd, whether that crowd is your social circle, your colleagues, or even your family, there is a subconscious pressure to conform. You don't even notice it happening. You begin to talk like them. You begin to value what they value. You begin to adopt their pace of life. And if that crowd is not moving toward greatness, they are, by default, pulling you away from it. The harsh truth that high achievers eventually learn is this. The crowd weakens your focus because the crowd is designed for comfort, not for breakthroughs. The dilution of ambition. Think of your ambition like a concentrated drop of ink. If you put that drop into a small vial of water, the water turns dark. The ink remains powerful. But if you drop that same amount of ink into a massive swimming pool, it disappears. It is diluted until it is invisible. This is what happens when you bring your big ideas to the pool of the general public. When you spend your time in groups that don't share your intensity, your ambition is diluted by their complacency. You walk into a room ready to change the world, but after 2 hours of listening to people complain about their bosses, gossip about celebrities, or discuss the latest distractions, your ink has vanished. You leave the room feeling a little less motivated, a little more tired, and significantly less focused. We have been told that 2 heads are better than 1, but in the world of deep focus and execution, that is rarely true. Most heads are filled with noise. When you bring more people into your mental space, you aren't just bringing their help. You are bringing their doubts, their distractions, and their limited horizons. The phenomenon of social loafing. Psychologists have studied a concept known as social loafing. It is the tendency for individuals to expend less effort when they are working as part of a group than when they are working alone. In a famous experiment involving a tug-of-war, researchers found that when people thought they were pulling the rope alone, they gave 100% of their strength. But when they believed they were pulling with a team, their individual effort dropped significantly. Why? Because the brain is a survival machine designed to conserve energy. If the brain perceives that someone else is carrying the load, it naturally relaxes. This is the hidden danger of the crowd. When you are always part of the team, your internal fire begins to dim. You stop feeling the absolute necessity of your own effort. You start to think, if I don't do this today, it's fine. Someone else is on it. Or, the group is doing okay, I can slack off a bit. But when you are alone, there is no rope sharing. If the rope moves, it's because you pulled it. If the project fails, it's because you didn't work. This clarity, this absolute lack of a safety net, is what creates elite focus. Solitude removes the option of loafing. It forces your brain to stay in high gear because it knows there is no one else coming to pick up the slack. The noise of the modern circle. Look at your current social circles. Look at the group chats you are in. Look at the people you eat lunch with. What is the primary currency of their conversation? Usually, it is talk. Crowds love to talk. They talk about what they want to do. They talk about what other people are doing. They talk about why things are unfair. They talk about the plan. There is a false sense of achievement that comes from talking. When you spend 3 hours in a coffee shop discussing your business plan with friends, you walk away feeling like you've actually worked. But you haven't. You've just burned through your mental energy without moving the needle an inch. Crowds talk. Individuals execute. The individual who stays home, closes the door, and works in silence for those same 3 hours doesn't get the social high of talking about their goals, but they have something much better. They have results. They have a finished product. They have a stronger muscle. They have a clearer mind. Focus is a finite resource. Every time you engage in the noise of the crowd, you are leaking that resource. You are spending your focus currency on things that don't matter. Solitude is the vault that keeps your focus safe. The mirror of solitude. When you are in a crowd, you are constantly looking at yourself through the eyes of others. You are performing. You are managing your image. You are trying to be the person the group expects you to be. This performance takes up a massive amount of mental bandwidth. When you go into solitude, you leave the performer at the door. You are forced to look into the mirror of your own thoughts. For many, this is terrifying. This is why people crave the crowd. They are running away from the silence of their own minds. They use the noise of others to drown out the voice that says, "You aren't working hard enough," or "You are wasting your potential." But for the strong, this silence is where the work begins. Solitude sharpens clarity. In the silence, you can finally hear your own intuition. You can see the problems in your strategy that were hidden by the cheering of your friends. You can see the flaws in your character that need to be fixed. Solitude is a laboratory. It is where you take your raw ideas and pressure test them without the interference of outside opinions. Every time you seek the approval of the crowd before you've finished your work, you are weakening the integrity of that work. You are letting experts who have never done what you're trying to do tell you how to do it. The average trap in the workplace. In the professional world, the crowd is often called the culture. Most corporate cultures are designed to keep people in a state of contained productivity. They want you to be productive enough to keep the machine running, but not so productive that you disrupt the status quo or make everyone else look bad. If you are a high performer in a room of average workers, the crowd will not celebrate you. They will try to normalize you. They will tell you to slow down, to take it easy, or that you're trying too hard. This is the crab in a bucket mentality. If one crab tries to climb out of the bucket, the others don't cheer. They grab its legs and pull it back down so they don't feel inferior. Walking alone allows you to set your own ceiling. When you aren't comparing your output to the person in the next cubicle, you realize that your potential is actually limitless. The only reason you thought you were at your limit was because you were looking at people who had already stopped trying. Learning to protect your peace. To build the strength of doing things alone, you must learn the art of strategic isolation. This doesn't mean you never speak to people again. It means you understand that focus is a jealous god. It demands your full attention, and it cannot share you with a crowd. You must create boundaries. You must be willing to say no to the social gathering that offers nothing but distraction. You must be willing to be the weird one who stays in on a Friday night to master a skill. You must be willing to walk away from the group chat when the conversation turns to gossip or negativity. When you remove the distraction of the crowd, something magical happens. The fog in your mind begins to clear. You start to see the path ahead with surgical precision. You realize that the things you thought were problems were actually just the opinions of people who didn't have your vision. Conclusion: the execute mindset. The world is full of people who are getting ready to get ready. They are waiting for a committee, a partner, or a group consensus. They are talking, posting, and dreaming in public. But the strongest people understand that the crowd is where dreams go to be averaged out. If you want to achieve something that most people haven't achieved, you must be willing to do what most people aren't doing: work in the dark. When you are alone, your discipline is tested. When you are alone, your focus is pure. When you are alone, your results are entirely yours. Stop looking for a tribe to join. Build your foundation first. Sharpen your focus in the quiet. Remember that while the crowd is busy talking about the next big thing, the individual in the quiet room is the one actually building it. Crowds talk. Individuals execute. The crowd will be there when you're finished. They will be there to cheer for the results they didn't have the focus to create. But until then, stay in the silence. Protect your focus. Walk your own path. Chapter 3. Solitude builds mental toughness. The noise we use to hide. Most people are engaged in a lifelong flight from themselves. We live in an era of unprecedented noise, a digital symphony of notifications, podcasts, music, and social media feeds that follow us from the moment we wake up to the moment we close our eyes. This noise serves a specific psychological purpose. It acts as a buffer. It prevents us from having to sit in a room alone and face the one person we are most afraid of, ourselves. Mental toughness is often portrayed as something loud, a coach screaming in a locker room, a soldier charging into battle, or a CEO commanding a boardroom. But real mental toughness, the kind that sustains a human being through a lifetime of challenges, is quiet. It is forged in the vacuum of solitude. It is what happens when the distractions are stripped away and you are left with nothing but your own thoughts, your own doubts, and your own resolve. Comfort loves company. Strength grows in solitude. The confrontation with self. When you are surrounded by people, you have 1,000 places to hide. If you feel insecure, you seek a compliment. If you feel bored, you start a conversation. If you feel a twinge of existential dread, you look for a distraction in the group's energy. But when you are alone, there is no noise to hide behind and no distractions to escape into. Solitude acts as a mirror. It shows you exactly who you are when no one is watching. It reveals your weaknesses, your laziness, and your fears. For the average person, this is unbearable. They find the silence deafening, so they reach for their phone or seek out a crowd. However, the person who chooses to stay in that room, the person who looks into that mirror and refuses to turn away, is the person who is building a mind of steel. Mental toughness is the ability to endure your own mind. It is the ability to sit with a difficult thought and not run away from it. When you conquer the inner world in solitude, the outer world becomes significantly less intimidating. The athlete in the dark. Consider the elite athlete. We see them under the bright lights of the stadium, surrounded by thousands of cheering fans. We see the victory lap and the gold medal. But that is not where the toughness was built. The toughness was built on a Tuesday morning at 4:30 a.m. It was built on a rain-slicked track or in a cold, empty gym where the only sound was the rhythmic thud of a heartbeat and the squeak of shoes on the floor. At that hour, there is no one to impress. There is no social media like to chase. There is only the agonizing voice in the head saying, "Stop. It hurts." No one will know if you quit 5 minutes early. The athlete who continues despite that voice is building a specific kind of mental armor. They are learning that their willpower is independent of external validation. If you only work hard when a coach is watching, you aren't disciplined. You are just obedient. But if you work hard when you are completely alone, you have developed a self-governance that is unbreakable. You have proven to yourself that your standards are higher than any crowd could ever set for you. The writer and the blank page. Mental toughness is not just physical. It is the endurance of the creative and intellectual spirit. Think of the writer, the philosopher, or the coder facing a blank screen. There is a specific kind of pain in the void of a new project. It is the pain of uncertainty. When you work in a group, the groupthink provides a sense of direction. But when you are building something from nothing, alone, you face the abyss of possibility. You have to make 1,000 decisions with no one to tell you if you're right or wrong. Every hour spent in that solitary struggle, wrestling with a paragraph, a line of code, or a complex problem, is a rep in the gym of mental grit. You are training your brain to stay calm in the face of confusion. You are learning to trust your own judgment. The noise of the world tries to tell you how to think, but solitude forces you to actually think. The entrepreneur's lonely night. Every great business began as a series of lonely nights. There is a romanticized version of the startup where everyone is drinking coffee and high-fiving in a modern office. But the reality is much bleaker. It is the founder sitting at a kitchen table at 2 a.m., looking at a dwindling bank account and a spreadsheet that doesn't make sense. In those moments, the temptation to quit is massive. If they had a boss, they could complain. If they had a large team, they could delegate the stress. But in the early days, the weight is theirs alone. This is the training ground. This is where the skin of the soul thickens. By navigating the fear of failure without a support system to lean on, the entrepreneur builds a level of resilience that no MBA can teach. They learn that they are their own best advocate. They learn that they can survive the worst-case scenario because they've already faced it in their mind, alone, and didn't blink. The boredom threshold. One of the greatest enemies of mental toughness in the 21st century is the inability to be bored. We have been conditioned to believe that every gap in our day must be filled with content. We check our phones in the elevator, at the red light, and in the checkout line. By doing this, we are weakening our mental muscles. We are becoming stimulation junkies. When a real challenge arises, one that requires long hours of monotonous, unglamorous work, we crumble because we haven't trained our minds to exist without a constant drip of dopamine. Solitude forces you to build a high boredom threshold. When you do things alone, you realize that the most important work is often the most boring. It is the repetition of the basics. It is the 500th rep, the 10th draft, the 100th sales call. Doing these things in isolation, without the fun of a social environment, is what separates the masters from the amateurs. If you can be bored and still stay on task, you are dangerous. You have a competitive advantage over 99% of the population who are slaves to their own need for distraction. The internal dialogue. When you are alone, you are forced to become your own coach. In a group, you rely on the vibe or the leader to set the tone. If the group is energetic, you are energetic. If the group is depressed, you are depressed. In solitude, you must generate your own energy. You have to develop an internal dialogue that is stronger than your environment. You learn to speak to yourself rather than listen to yourself. Instead of listening to the voice that says, "I'm tired," or "this is too hard," you learn to command yourself, "Move, finish, focus." This internal command structure is the hallmark of the mentally tough. It is a private language of discipline that can only be practiced in the silence. Once you have mastered the art of self-command in solitude, you will find that you are no longer at the mercy of the world's moods. You become a thermostat, not a thermometer. You set the temperature, you don't just react to it. The gift of unrecognized work. We live in a post and boast culture. People feel that if they didn't record their workout, it didn't count. If they didn't announce their grind, it didn't happen. This is a profound mental weakness. It means their effort is fueled by the hope of external praise. Real strength is built when you do the work and tell no one. There is a deep, quiet power in having a secret history of hard work. When you know that you have put in thousands of hours that no one will ever see, you develop a quiet confidence. You don't need to bark to prove you're a wolf. You know what you've done. This unrecognized work builds a mental reserve. When a crisis hits, the person who relies on praise will look around for a crowd to support them. But the person who has trained in solitude will simply reach into their reserve of private victories and find the strength to stand firm. Developing the solitary routine. To build this toughness, you must deliberately seek out periods of hard solitude. This isn't just sitting on a beach, it's engaging in difficult tasks alone. Go for a long run without music. Face the thoughts that come up when there's no beat to distract you. Work on a complex skill for 3 hours with your phone in another room. Eat a meal alone in a restaurant without looking at a screen. Notice the urge to hide in your phone and resist it. These small acts are microdoses of mental toughness. They prepare you for the macrodoses that life will eventually demand. Conclusion: the fortress of the mind. The world is unpredictable. Friends will leave, mentors will pass away, and crowds will turn on you. If your mental strength is built on the foundation of other people, your house will fall when the storm comes. But if you have built your strength in solitude, if you have faced your own shadows, endured your own boredom, and coached yourself through your own failures, then you have a fortress that no one can take from you. You will realize that being alone is not a punishment, it is a privilege. It is the time when the self is constructed. It is the time when the weak are filtered out and the strong are forged. Comfort loves company. Strength grows in solitude. When you can stand alone in a room and feel perfectly at peace with the work you are doing, you have reached a level of power that most people will never know. You have found the strength of doing things alone. Chapter 4. Stop explaining your vision. The dopamine of the announcement. We have all been there. You have a spark, a sudden, electric idea for a business, a book, a fitness transformation, or a lifestyle change. It feels massive. It feels life-changing. And the very first thing you want to do is tell someone. You call your best friend, you sit down with your partner, or you post a vague book status update about big things coming. As you explain the vision, you see their eyes light up, or perhaps you just imagine they are. You feel a rush of excitement. You feel proud. You feel like you've already started. But scientifically, something dangerous is happening in your brain. When you share your intentions with others, your brain releases a hit of dopamine, the same chemical reward it would give you if you had actually achieved the goal. Psychologists call this social reality. Because you've told people about the plan and they have acknowledged it, your mind tricks itself into believing the work is already done. You've satisfied the urge to be seen as a success without actually putting in a single hour of labor. The result? Your drive vanishes. The hunger that was supposed to fuel your late-night work sessions has been fed by the cheap calories of a conversation. You don't need agreement. You need progress. The energy leak. Ambition is like steam in a boiler. If the boiler is sealed, the pressure builds until it has enough power to move a massive locomotive. But if the boiler has a dozen tiny leaks, the steam hisses out into the air. The pressure drops, and the train stays exactly where it is. Every time you explain your vision to someone who isn't involved in the execution, you are opening a valve. You are letting the steam of your ambition leak out. You are spending the mental and emotional energy required to build the thing on the act of describing the thing. Building something great is an uphill battle. It requires a concentrated, obsessed mind. When you stop to explain yourself to the spectators on the sidelines, you lose your rhythm. You lose your flow. Great builders don't have time for press conferences in the middle of the construction phase. They understand that every word spoken is a unit of energy that could have been a brick laid. The mirror of other people's limits. There is another, more toxic reason to stop explaining. Most people cannot see what you see. Your vision is unique to you. It was given to you because you have the specific set of skills, experiences, and madness required to bring it to life. When you take that vision and present it to someone else for feedback or approval, you are asking a person with a different map to tell you where you should go. If you explain $1 million idea to someone who is comfortable with a $50,000 life, they will tell you why it's unrealistic. If you explain a path of extreme discipline to someone who lives for the weekend, they will tell you that you're burning yourself out. They aren't necessarily trying to hurt you. They are simply projecting their own limits onto your horizon. They cannot see your why, so they focus on the how, and the how always looks impossible from the outside. By explaining your vision, you invite their skepticism into your subconscious. You start to see your dream through their fearful eyes. You start to doubt the very thing that was crystal clear when you were alone. The permission trap. Ask yourself a hard question. Why am I explaining this? Most of the time, explaining is just a polite word for seeking permission. You want someone to tell you that you aren't crazy. You want someone to validate your risk so that if you fail, you can say, well, they thought it was a good idea too. This is a sign of internal weakness. If your vision requires the agreement of your social circle to be valid, then it isn't a vision, it's a consensus. Real innovators don't seek consensus. They don't wait for a green light from people who have never left the starting line. If you believe in what you are doing, you don't need to explain it. Explaining is for people who are unsure. Execution is for people who are certain. When you stop explaining, you send a powerful signal to your own subconscious. I don't need your approval. I have my own orders. Case study: the silence of the Wright brothers. In the early 1900s, the race to achieve manned flight was the space race of its day. There were well-funded, highly educated teams in Washington, D.C., who were constantly giving interviews and talking to the press about how they would conquer the skies. They were explaining their vision to the world. Meanwhile, in Dayton, Ohio, two brothers who owned a bicycle shop, Orville and Wilbur Wright, were working in near-total silence. They didn't have government grants. They didn't have a public relations team. They didn't spend their nights in salons explaining the physics of lift to skeptical socialites. They stayed in their shop. They tested their gliders in the lonely dunes of Kitty Hawk, where there was no one but the wind and the sand. They focused entirely on the work. When they finally flew in 1903, the world was shocked. Not because they hadn't heard of flight, but because the people who were talking about it weren't the ones who did it. The Wright brothers didn't need the world to agree that flight was possible. They just needed the plane to stay in the air. Persuasion versus execution. There is a massive difference between pitching and explaining. If you are a founder seeking investment, you pitch. That is a strategic business move. But most people spend their time explaining to their parents, their friends, or their skeptical cousins. This kind of explanation is a black hole. It produces zero ROI, return on investment. Your cousin's approval of your new diet won't help you lose 5 pounds. Your friend's understanding of your new business model won't help you find your first customer. The only language that actually matters in the real world is the language of results. Results are the ultimate form of persuasion. They are the only argument that no one can refute. If you want to convince people that your vision is right, don't use your mouth. Use your hands. Build the prototype. Write the chapters. Lose the weight. Earn the revenue. Once the result exists in the physical world, you won't have to explain a thing. People will see it, and they will explain it to themselves. Protecting the purity of the idea. Every time you explain your vision, the idea changes slightly to fit the listener. You see a look of confusion on their face, so you simplify the idea. You see a look of judgment, so you make the idea safer or more socially acceptable. Slowly, through 1,000 explanations, your original, radical, world-changing vision gets sanded down. It becomes smooth, average, and boring. It becomes something that makes sense to the crowd. By keeping your vision to yourself, you protect its purity. You allow it to grow in the dark, where it can be as wild and unrealistic as it needs to be. You give the seed time to grow deep roots before it has to face the wind of public opinion. The shift, from narrator to actor. To master the strength of doing things alone, you must transition from being the narrator of your life to being the actor in it. Narrators talk about what is happening. They describe the scene. They comment on the struggles. Actors simply perform. They move the plot forward. Next time you feel the urge to explain your latest project, catch yourself. Close your mouth. Take that energy, that itch to be understood, and channel it directly into the next task. If you're writing a book, don't tell someone about the plot. Write the next 5 pages. If you're starting a business, don't tell someone about the brand identity. Find a way to make a sale. There is a profound, quiet dignity in being a person of action. People will eventually notice that you've changed. They will ask, "What are you working on?" And your answer should be a polite, vague smile and a return to your work. The loneliness of the visionary. Walking alone means accepting that for a long time, you will be misunderstood. This is the price of admission for a great life. If everyone understands what you are doing, you aren't doing anything new. If everyone agrees with your path, you are walking on a highway, not a trail. The visionary is someone who sees a reality that does not yet exist. By definition, you cannot explain a non-existent reality to someone who relies on their eyes to believe. Stop trying to bridge the gap between your mind and theirs. Focus on bridging the gap between your mind and the physical world. Conclusion. Progress is the only validation. We live in a world that is addicted to sharing. We are told to build in public, to share our journey, and to be transparent. But there is a time for transparency and a time for secrecy. The strongest parts of a building are the foundations, and the foundations are always underground, hidden in the dark and never seen by the public. If you want your life to stand tall, you must be willing to do the heavy lifting in total silence. Stop looking for the nod of approval. Stop waiting for the "I see what you mean" from people who aren't even looking. You don't need agreement. You need progress. When the progress is undeniable, the vision will be clear. Until then, keep the fire contained. Keep the steam in the boiler. Let your silence be the evidence of your focus, and let your results be the only explanation you ever give. Chapter 5. Silence is a strategic advantage. The modern war on privacy. We live in an age of radical transparency. We are told that if we didn't document it, it didn't happen. We are encouraged to build in public, to share our daily vlogs, and to broadcast our goals to the world as a way of keeping ourselves accountable. We have turned our private ambitions into public performances. But there is a high price to pay for this constant visibility. When you broadcast your every move, you aren't just sharing your progress. You are inviting the entire world into your workshop. You are allowing the opinions, the criticisms, and the well-meaning advice of the masses to seep into the foundation of your work. The strongest people understand a secret that the modern world has forgotten. Silence is a strategic advantage. Moving quietly is not about being secretive or shifty. It is about protecting the sanctity of your focus. It is about recognizing that your energy is a finite resource and that every ounce of it spent managing public perception is an ounce that could have been spent on execution. Move in silence. Let results make the noise. The armor of the unknown. When you announce your goals publicly, you create a target. Whether you realize it or not, you have invited social pressure into your life. Now, you aren't just working for yourself. You are working to avoid the embarrassment of failing in front of others. While some people think this pressure is a good motivator, it usually backfires. It creates a performative mindset. You start making decisions based on how they will look in a status update rather than what is actually best for the project. You become a slave to the expectations you've created. Silence, however, acts as armor. When no one knows what you are working on, no one can tell you that you're doing it wrong. No one can project their fears onto you. No one can ask you for updates that force you to justify your pace. When you move in silence, you are free. You are working in a vacuum where the only thing that matters is the quality of the work. You can pivot without explaining why. You can fail and restart without the sting of public judgment. You can take the time to get it right, rather than the time to make it look good. The sabotage of well-meaning people. We like to think that our friends and family want us to succeed. And for the most part, they do, but only to a point. Most people want you to do well, but they don't want you to do so well that you make them feel uncomfortable with their own lack of progress. When you announce a massive goal, it often triggers a threat response in the people around you. They start giving you realistic advice. They point out the risks. They tell you stories about people who tried what you're doing and failed. They aren't necessarily trying to sabotage you. They are trying to bring you back down to their level so the social equilibrium is maintained. By staying silent, you bypass this entire social minefield. You don't give anyone the opportunity to plant seeds of doubt in your mind. You don't give them a chance to talk you out of it. By the time they realize what you've been doing, it's already done. The results are already there. It is much harder to argue with a finished product than it is to argue with a plan. The stealth mode advantage. In the world of business, there is a concept called stealth mode. It's when a company works on a revolutionary product in complete secrecy until it is ready for launch. They do this to protect their intellectual property and to ensure they have a massive head start on the competition. You should apply stealth mode to your personal life. Think about the psychological impact of the reveal. Imagine working on a skill, a business, or a body transformation for 6 months in total silence. You don't post about it. You don't talk about it. You just disappear into the work. Then, one day, you emerge, and the change is undeniable. The impact of that reveal is 1,000 times more powerful than the slow, agonizing drip of daily updates. When you leak your progress bit by bit, you satisfy the world's curiosity, and you lose the wow factor. But more importantly, you lose the internal fire that comes from having a secret. There is a unique kind of power in having a secret history of work. It builds a sense of self-containment. You know something the world doesn't know. You are a person of depth, not a person of surface-level chatter. The social expectations trap. When you tell people you are going to do something, let's say, lose 30 pounds, you have just handed them a yardstick to measure you with. Every time they see you, they will be looking at your plate. They will be judging your progress. This creates a psychological burden. If you have a bad week and slip up, you don't just feel bad for yourself. You feel like you've failed your audience. This externalized failure is much harder to recover from than private failure. Now, imagine you say nothing. You just start eating better and training. People might notice you're looking better, but they don't have a specific goal to hold against you. You are doing it for you. If you have a setback, you handle it privately and move on. There is no social weight added to the struggle. Silence removes the performance aspect of self-improvement. It allows you to be honest with yourself because you aren't busy trying to be inspiring for everyone else. Protecting your flow. Deep work and high-level execution require a state of flow. Flow is a delicate mental state where you are fully immersed in a task. It is the birthplace of genius. Nothing kills flow faster than the need to document it. If you are constantly thinking, how can I explain this to my followers? Or what will my friends think of this stage of the process? You are not in flow. You are in PR mode. You are standing outside of yourself, watching yourself work. Silence allows you to stay inside the work. It allows you to be messy. It allows you to go down rabbit holes that might not make sense to an outsider but are essential for your discovery. Great things are rarely built in a straight line. They are built through a series of corrections, failures, and crazy experiments. If you are moving in silence, you have the freedom to be crazy until you are right. The power of the finished product. There is a profound difference between the energy of a plan and the energy of a result. A plan is flimsy. It is a promise. It is a maybe. A result is a fact. It is heavy. It is undeniable. Most people spend their lives trading in the currency of promises. They tell you what they're going to do next year. They tell you who they're going to become. But the person who moves in silence is trading in the currency of facts. When you let your results make the noise, you don't have to defend your position. You don't have to argue. You don't have to convince anyone of your worth. The work stands on its own 2 feet and speaks a language that every human being understands, the language of excellence. Silence is the ultimate filter for your social life. The people who are truly on your side will respect your focus. The people who just wanted to be entertained by your journey will drift away because you aren't giving them anything to talk about. This is a good thing. You are clearing the room so you can work. Practical silence. How to disappear. How do you actually move in silence in a world that demands your attention? The 90-day rule. Take your next major goal and commit to not mentioning it to a single soul for 90 days. No social media posts, no dinner table talk, no casual mentions. Work on it in the dark. Watch how much more you get done when you aren't talking about it. Audit your digital output. Look at your social media. Are you posting because you have something valuable to say? Or are you posting because you want the validation hit of being seen as someone who is hustling? If it's the latter, delete the app for a month. The closed circle exception. You can have a council of 1 or 2, trusted mentors or partners who are directly involved in the execution. Everyone else is a spectator. Spectators don't get to see the rehearsals. They only get to see the show. Embrace being boring. When people ask what's new with you, learn to say, not much, just working. Let them think you're boring. Let them think you've plateaued. Their underestimation of you is a gift. It gives you the space to outpace them while they aren't looking. The psychological satisfaction of the secret. There is a deep, primal satisfaction in knowing that you are more than what people see. It builds a core of self-respect. When you are the only one who knows how hard you worked this morning, when you are the only one who knows about the massive win you just had, you realize that you don't need the world's applause to feel valid. This is the ultimate independence. If you need the world to know you're winning to feel like a winner, you are still a slave to the crowd. But if you can win in total silence and feel a sense of peace, you are truly free. Conclusion. Let the results speak. The world is noisy enough. It doesn't need more announcements, more coming soon teasers, or more empty promises. It needs people who can get things done. By choosing silence, you are choosing the path of the professional. You are choosing to let your character be defined by your actions rather than your adjectives. The next time you feel the urge to share your vision, remember the boiler. Keep the steam inside. Let the pressure build. Let the world wonder what you're up to. Let them make their guesses. And then, when the time is right, let the results of your solitary labor crash into the world like a wave. You won't need a caption. You won't need an explanation. You won't need a single word. Move in silence. Let results make the noise. Chapter 6. Independence creates real confidence. The great illusion of confidence. In our modern culture, we have been sold a lie about what confidence actually is. We are told that confidence is a vibe or a feeling. We are told that we can manifest it through positive affirmations in the mirror, or that we can find it by surrounding ourselves with people who constantly hype us up. We treat confidence like a garment we can put on, an outward display of bravado, loud talking, and expensive clothes. But this is not confidence. This is a mask. And like any mask, it is fragile. It depends entirely on the environment. If the crowd stops cheering, the confident person shrivels. If the affirmations don't work one morning, the confident person stays in bed. True, unshakable confidence is not the belief that you will succeed. It is the knowledge that you can handle failure. It is not the belief that people will like you. It is the internal certainty that you will be perfectly fine if they don't. This level of confidence cannot be given to you by a therapist, a parent, or a friend. It cannot be bought. Confidence is built privately before it is displayed publicly. It is the byproduct of one thing and one thing only: independence. It is the result of solving problems alone, overcoming obstacles without a hand to hold, and proving to yourself, through raw evidence, that you are capable of navigating the world on your own terms. The problem with borrowed confidence. Most people live on borrowed confidence. Their self-esteem is a high-interest loan taken out from their social circle. They feel good because their boss praised them. They feel capable because their partner supports them. They feel attractive because they got likes on a photo. While these things feel good, they are dangerous because they are external. You don't own them. If your boss leaves, if your partner walks away, or if the algorithm changes, your confidence vanishes. You are left hollow because you never built an internal foundation. You were a passenger in your own life, relying on the driver to tell you that you were doing great. Independence changes the equation. When you start doing things alone, when you travel alone, start a project alone, or learn a skill alone, you stop borrowing confidence and start earning it. You are no longer waiting for a receipt of your worth from someone else. You are generating your own power. Competence, the only true source of confidence. There is a direct correlation between competence and confidence. You cannot think your way into being a confident swimmer if you have never been in the water. You will be confident the moment you know, with absolute certainty, that you can stay afloat and move toward the shore. The same applies to life. Real confidence comes from proof of work. Think about the last time you faced a difficult problem, a technical glitch, a broken appliance, a complex bureaucratic hurdle, or a difficult skill you needed to master. What was your first instinct? For most, it is to pick up the phone. They call a pro, they ask a friend, or they seek immediate help. But every time you delegate a problem, you are sending a message to your subconscious: I am not capable of handling this. You are effectively voting against yourself. However, when you stay in the room with the problem, when you struggle with the manual, watch the tutorials, fail 10 times, and finally, on the 11th try, fix it yourself, something happens in your brain. A new credit is added to your internal bank account. You don't just have a fixed appliance. You have a new piece of evidence that says, I can figure things out. Multiply this by 1,000 solitary victories, and you become a person who moves through the world with a quiet, terrifying level of certainty. You aren't acting confident. You simply are confident because you have a mountain of evidence behind you. Learning in the dark. Doing things alone allows for a deeper level of learning that group settings often prevent. In a group, there is a diffusion of responsibility. If you're learning a new language in a class, you can hide behind the stronger students. If you're building a project with a team, you can lean on the person who is better at the technical side. But when you learn alone, there is no one to hide behind. You have to face the gap in your knowledge directly. You have to struggle with the concepts until they click. This solitary struggle is where the real neural pathways are formed. When you teach yourself a skill, whether it's coding, carpentry, investing, or a new language, you aren't just gaining knowledge, you are gaining self-trust. You are proving that your mind is a tool that can be sharpened without an outside hand. This self-trust is the highest form of confidence. It is the knowledge that even if you were stripped of everything and dropped into a new country with nothing but your own mind, you could build it all back. The solo travel effect. One of the most powerful ways to build independent confidence is to put yourself in a physical environment where you have no safety net. This is why solo travel or moving to a new city alone is so transformative. When you are in a foreign place where no one knows your name and you don't have a friend to translate the world for you, you are forced to become highly competent. You have to find your way. You have to eat. You have to solve the crisis of a missed train or a lost wallet. In these moments, you realize that the comfort of your home life was actually a cage that kept your confidence small. By surviving and thriving in the unknown, alone, you realize that the world is much smaller than you thought and that you are much larger than you realized. You return home with a different frequency. People notice it. They see a person who doesn't look around for permission anymore. Confidence is not about perfection. A common mistake is thinking that independent confidence means never making a mistake. In fact, it's the opposite. People who always work in groups are often terrified of making mistakes because of the social shame involved. But when you do things alone, you develop a healthy relationship with failure. You realize that failure is just a data point. It's an error message in the system. Because you are the only one there to see the mistake, you don't waste energy on saving face. You just fix it. This builds the confidence to take bigger risks. You know that if you mess up, you have the tools to clean it up. You aren't afraid of the mess. True confidence is the ability to say, I have no idea how to do this yet, but I'm the kind of person who will figure it out. That sentence is only honest if you have a history of actually figuring things out by yourself. The fragility of groupthink. We see the lack of independent confidence most clearly in groupthink. This is when people are afraid to voice an opinion or take an action until they see what the rest of the group is doing. They are terrified of being the outlier. This is a form of mental cowardice born from a lack of solitary testing. If you have never spent time alone with your own thoughts, you don't even know what your opinions are. You are just a mirror for the opinions of others. The person who has spent time in solitude, building things and thinking for themselves, is immune to this. Their confidence is decoupled from the group's consensus. They can stand alone in a room and disagree with everyone else, not because they are arrogant, but because they have already vetted their ideas in the laboratory of their own mind. They don't need a majority vote to feel that they are standing on solid ground. Building your proof of work portfolio. If you feel your confidence is low, don't look for a motivational speaker. Look for a solo project. Confidence is built through a portfolio of evidence. You need to start small and build the load over time. Solve a technical problem without help. The next time your computer acts up or a sink leaks, don't call for help immediately. Spend 2 hours trying to fix it yourself. Go on a solo date. Go to a cinema or a high-end restaurant alone. Sit with the initial discomfort of not having a social shield, your phone or a friend. Notice how, after 20 minutes, the discomfort vanishes and is replaced by a sense of presence. Master a solo skill. Choose something that requires no one else: drawing, long-distance running, meditation, or learning a musical instrument. The progress you make in private will become the armor you wear in public. Finish what you start. The biggest killer of self-confidence is the unfinished project. Every time you quit, you are telling yourself you aren't a finisher. Even if the project is small, finish it alone. The close is where the confidence lives. The quiet power of the independent. When you meet someone with true, independent confidence, you can feel it immediately. They don't talk the most. They don't try to dominate the room. They don't flex their achievements. In fact, they are often the quietest people in the room. They don't feel the need to prove anything because they have already proven it to themselves. They aren't looking for validation because they have an internal validation engine that is always running. This is the ultimate goal of doing things alone. It is to reach a state where you are so grounded in your own competence that the world's praise feels like a nice to have rather than a need to have. You become unshakable because your foundation is built on your own labor. Conclusion: the private forge. The world is a loud, chaotic place that will constantly try to tell you who you are, what you can do, and what you should fear. If you don't have a private forge where you have hammered out your own identity, the world will hammer it out for you. Solitude is that forge. Every solo journey, every lonely hour of study, and every problem you solved with your own 2 hands was a strike of the hammer. Do not fear the time you spend alone. Do not see it as missing out on the social world. See it as the essential R&D, research and development of your soul. When you emerge from your solitude, you won't need to tell people you are confident. They will see it in the way you walk. They will hear it in the way you speak. They will sense it in your lack of neediness. You will have the rarest and most powerful form of human energy, a confidence that was built in the dark and therefore can never be extinguished by the light of the world. Confidence is built privately before it is displayed publicly. Chapter 7. Loneliness is a training ground. The fear of the void. There is a specific feeling that every person walking an unconventional path knows all too well. It is that hollow, cold ache that settles in the chest on a Tuesday night or a Sunday afternoon. It's the realization that while the rest of the world is connected, laughing in groups, celebrating milestones, and moving in a comfortable herd, you are standing in a field of one. We call this feeling loneliness. And in our society, we treat it like a disease. We think that if we are lonely, there must be something wrong with us. We assume we are unlovable, or weird, or failing at the game of life. We are told to get out there, to join a club, or to swipe through an endless gallery of strangers to find a connection. But what if loneliness isn't a sign that you're lost? What if it's a sign that you're being prepared? What if the feeling of being alone is actually the incubation period for greatness? The truth that most successful people don't talk about is that the most transformative years of their lives were their loneliest. Before they were leaders, before they were icons, and before they were goals, they were outcasts. They were in the wilderness. And they stayed there until they were strong enough to come out. Loneliness is temporary. Strength is permanent. The myth of the overnight success. When we look at a person at the peak of their power, we see the finished product. We see the celebrity, the billionaire, or the elite athlete. We see them surrounded by people, cameras, and support systems. We assume it was always like this. But if you peel back the layers and look at the origin story, you will almost always find a wilderness phase. This is a period, often lasting 5 to 10 years, where the person was working on their craft and absolutely no one cared. They were lonely. They were misunderstood. Their family told them to be realistic. Their friends drifted away because they were no longer fun to be around. Think of the scientist working on a theory that everyone calls fringe for 2 decades. Think of the actor who spent 10 years in a basement apartment, working a service job and going to auditions alone, while their peers were getting married and buying houses. This phase is not a mistake. It is a filter. The universe uses loneliness to see who is truly committed. If your vision can survive a year of total silence, it is a real vision. If it can survive the feeling of being the only one in the room who believes, then you have found something that can change the world. The refinement of the soul. Loneliness is a training ground because it strips away everything that is fake in your life. When you are popular, you are often surrounded by yes-men and fair-weather friends. You are being performed for, and you are performing in return. It is very hard to see your own soul when there is a crowd of people in front of it. But when you are alone, the distractions vanish. You are forced to confront your own character. You have to learn how to keep your own company. You have to learn how to find joy in the work itself, rather than in the praise that comes from it. This is where true integrity is built. Integrity is doing the right thing when no one is looking. But high-level integrity is working hard when no one is cheering. If you can maintain a high standard of excellence in a room alone, without a boss, without a fan base, and without a partner, you have reached a state of self-sovereignty. You have become your own source of light. This is a level of power that no one can ever take away from you, because no one gave it to you in the first place. The faith of the pioneer. Every great path begins as a lonely road. By definition, a pioneer is someone who goes where no one else has gone yet. If there were a crowd there, you wouldn't be a pioneer, you'd be a tourist. Loneliness is the price of admission for a pioneer. You are building a bridge to a future that only you can see. Because others cannot see it, they cannot support you. They might even try to stop you because your movement makes them feel uncomfortable with their own stagnation. During this period, you are required to have faith without support. This is the ultimate spiritual and mental workout. It's easy to have faith when the bank account is full and the crowd is cheering. It's another thing entirely to have faith when the room is empty and the results are non-existent. When you stay on the path during these lonely seasons, You are building a mental muscle that is rare. You are teaching your brain to prioritize the future self over the present discomfort. You are proving that your will is stronger than your environment. The social pruning process. We often view the loss of friends as a tragedy. We see our social circle shrinking and we feel like we are losing. But in the context of growth, loneliness is often a sign of social pruning. Think of a fruit tree. If the gardener wants the tree to produce the largest, sweetest fruit, they must cut away the excess branches. They prune the tree so that its energy is concentrated into the most important parts. Your life is the same. As you begin to grow, as you begin to value discipline and vision, the excess branches of your life will fall away. The people who only wanted to party with you will disappear. The people who are intimidated by your ambition will find reasons to be busy. This creates a vacuum of loneliness. It feels bad at first. You feel like you're becoming an island. But this vacuum is essential. You cannot invite higher-level people into your life if your table is already full of people who don't respect your journey. Loneliness is the cleansing phase that makes room for the tribe you actually deserve. You are not losing friends. You are sorting them. Loneliness versus solitude. Choosing the frame. The difference between a prison and a monastery is whether or not the person wants to be there. Both have stone walls, silence, and simple food. But in the prison, the silence is a punishment. In the monastery, the silence is a gateway to the divine. The training ground of loneliness is all about your perspective. If you view your alone time as a period of being rejected by the world, it will destroy you. But if you view it as a monastic phase, a time to train, to build, and to harden your resolve, it will create you. Instead of saying, "I am lonely," start saying, "I am in training." Instead of saying, "Nobody wants to hang out with me," say, "The world is giving me the gift of uninterrupted focus." When you change the frame, you change the energy. You stop being a victim of isolation and start being a master of solitude. You realize that the silence is not empty. It is full of the potential for you to become whoever you need to be. The example of the creative journey. Consider the life of a great writer, painter, or developer. There is a period in their career where they are producing work that is actually good, but no one is paying attention yet. They are screaming into a void. This period is essential for one reason. It allows them to fail without public shame. It allows them to experiment and find their voice. If they had been successful too early, they would have been forced to stick to whatever made them famous. Their lonely years were their most creative years because they had nothing to lose. If you are in that phase right now, if you are working on something and it feels like no one is watching, cherish it. This is the only time you will ever have this much freedom. The loneliness is actually your laboratory. Use it to become so good that when you finally emerge, the world has no choice but to pay attention. How to survive the wilderness. Training in loneliness requires a specific set of rules. You cannot just drift through it, or you will fall into depression. You must be intentional. Strict routines. When you are alone, you have no external structure. You must build your own. Wake up at the same time. Train at the same time. Work at the same time. Routine is the anchor that keeps your mind from drifting into dark places. Internal dialogue. You are the only person you are talking to most of the day. Be a good coach. If you catch yourself being a bad friend to yourself, judging your progress or calling yourself a loser, shut it down. Talk to yourself like a commander talks to a soldier they believe in. Find virtual mentors. If your physical environment is lonely, fill your mental environment with the voices of the giants. Read the biographies of those who walked alone. Listen to their words. Realize that you aren't actually alone. You are part of a long lineage of people who walked this path before you. Embrace the pain. When the ache of loneliness hits, don't run to your phone. Don't go to a bar just to be around bodies. Sit with it. Let it burn. Ask yourself, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Usually, the pain is just your old self dying so the new self can be born. The return from the wilderness. Eventually, the training ground will have done its work. You will find that you are no longer afraid of being alone. You will find that your self-worth is no longer tied to a notification or a social invitation. You will have a core of steel. And something strange will happen. People will start to gravitate toward you. They will sense your density. They will see that you don't need them, and because of that, they will want to be around you. You will attract a new tribe, one that is built on mutual respect and shared vision, rather than just company for the sake of avoiding silence. But when you return to the world, you will be different. You will always know that you have a home in the silence. You will never again be a slave to the crowd, because you have proven that you can survive without it. Conclusion: the permanent strength. Loneliness is a stage of growth, not a destination. It is the winter of the soul. And just as the trees use the winter to pull their energy into their roots so they can explode with life in the spring, you are using this time to build your foundation. The people who are terrified of loneliness never build roots. They stay on the surface. They are blown over by the first wind of hardship because they have no internal anchor. But you are building a root system that goes deep into the earth. You are learning the strength of one. So, when the world feels quiet, and when it feels like no one sees your struggle, smile. You are in the training ground. You are being forged. The ache you feel is the sound of your spirit becoming unbreakable. Stay the course. Don't look for a shortcut out of the wilderness. Finish the training. Loneliness is temporary. Strength is permanent. Chapter 8. Self-reliance eliminates excuses. The convenience of the finger point. Human beings are master architects of the exit ramp. Whenever we face a challenge that feels too heavy, or a goal that feels too far out of reach, our subconscious begins searching for a way out that preserves our ego. We look for a reason why our failure isn't actually our fault. When you work in groups, when you depend on a partner, or when you rely on a support system, you are surrounding yourself with a gallery of potential scapegoats. If the business fails, it's because your partner didn't put in the hours. If the project is late, it's because the team lacked communication. If you didn't get in shape, it's because your trainer wasn't motivating enough or your spouse kept buying junk food. We use other people as a buffer between ourselves and the cold, hard truth of our own inadequacy. But the moment you commit to doing things alone, the moment you embrace total self-reliance, that buffer vanishes. You find yourself standing in a room with only one other person, the one in the mirror. And in that room, there is nowhere to point the finger. No support. No excuses. Just action. The death of the victim mindset. The most dangerous virus in the modern world is the victim mindset. It is the belief that your life is being dictated by external forces. The economy, your upbringing, your boss, your genetics, or your lack of connections. While these factors certainly exist, the victim mindset uses them as a get-out-of-jail-free card for stagnation. Self-reliance is the antidote to this virus. It is the radical acceptance that while you cannot control the wind, you are the only one responsible for the sails. When you stop depending on others, you realize that your lack of support was actually your greatest excuse. Many people stay in a state of potential for years because they are waiting for a mentor to choose them, or a bank to fund them, or a friend to join them. They say, "I would start, but I don't have X." By choosing to walk alone, you strip away the X. You say, "I will start with exactly what I have, and if I fail, I will own the wreckage." This transition is terrifying because it removes your safety net of blame. But it is also the most liberating moment of your life. Because if you are the reason you are failing, you are also the only person who can make you succeed. The power of radical ownership. In the world of elite military leadership, there is a concept called extreme ownership. It means that a leader is responsible for everything in their world. If a subordinate makes a mistake, the leader doesn't blame the subordinate. They ask, "How did I fail to train them or communicate the mission clearly?" When you apply this to your solo journey, it becomes total ownership. If you are working alone and you hit a wall, you don't have the luxury of complaining about bad management. You are the management. If you didn't hit your numbers, you didn't work hard enough or you didn't work smart enough. If you lost focus, you didn't design your environment well enough. This level of ownership creates a no-exit psychological state. When you know that no one is coming to pick up the slack, your brain switches from complaining mode into problem-solving mode. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How do I fix this?" Self-reliance turns you into a full-stack human being. You learn to be the visionary, the worker, the auditor, and the cheerleader. You realize that excuses are just lies you tell yourself to make mediocrity feel comfortable. The gift of no support. We often look at people who have connections or investors or supportive families with envy. We think they have an unfair advantage. And in the short term, they do. They have a softer landing. But there is a hidden tax on that support. It breeds weakness. When you have a support system, you don't have to develop the survival muscles required to handle a crisis. You don't have to learn the technical details because you can hire someone. You don't have to build grit because someone is always there to tell you it's going to be okay. When you have no support, you are forced to become a polymath. You are forced to be resourceful. You learn how to code because you can't afford a developer. You learn how to sell because you have no marketing team. You learn how to manage your emotions because you have no one to vent to. 10 years down the line, the person who had support is often fragile and dependent. But the person who started alone is a titan. They are a one-person army. They have no excuses because they have seen every part of the machine and they know how to fix it. Their disadvantage was actually their training ground. Blame is an energy leak. Think of your daily mental energy as a battery. Every time you spend time blaming someone or something else for your situation, you are draining that battery. The economy is bad. Drain. My parents didn't believe in me. Drain. I don't have the right equipment. Drain. None of these thoughts move you an inch closer to your goal. They are passive thoughts. They keep you stuck in the past or in an imagined reality. Self-reliance closes these leaks. When you accept that it's all on you, you stop wasting energy on the why and start spending it all on the what and the how. You become incredibly efficient. You realize that a 10-minute rant about how unfair life is actually 10 minutes you could have spent making progress. The person who walks alone doesn't have time to complain. They are too busy navigating. The mirror test. Developing self-awareness. The most difficult part of self-reliance is the honesty it requires. When you work with others, you can hide your laziness behind their activity. You can pretend you're working while you're actually just collaborating. When you are alone, the mirror test is constant. You know exactly how many hours you actually worked. You know if you were truly focused or if you were just scrolling through social media. You know if you quit because you were tired or because you were afraid. This forced honesty builds a level of self-awareness that is impossible to achieve in a crowd. You begin to see the patterns of your own sabotage. You see the excuse loops your brain tries to run. And because you are the only one in charge, you can interrupt those loops. You develop a coach-player relationship with yourself. You learn to push yourself when you're flagging and to audit yourself when you're failing. You become your own toughest critic and your own most loyal supporter. Building the action-first muscle. In a world of planners and dreamers, the self-reliant individual is a door. They understand that just action is the only thing that produces data. Most people use planning as a form of sophisticated procrastination. They want to make sure they have the right support or the perfect strategy before they move. They are looking for a guarantee that they won't fail. But the self-reliant person knows there are no guarantees. They know that the only way to find the path is to start walking. If they hit a dead end, they turn around and try another way. They don't wait for a map. They draw the map as they go. No support. No excuses. Just action. This mantra becomes the rhythm of your life. When a problem arises, you don't call a meeting. You take action. When you feel a wave of self-pity, you don't look for a shoulder to cry on. You take action. You realize that action is the only legitimate response to a challenge. Case study. The transformation of the self-made. Look at individuals who have transformed their lives, not just financially, but physically and mentally. Consider the person who was 100 pounds overweight and decided to change. In the beginning, they might have looked for a diet buddy or a gym partner. But usually, those people fail. Why? Because if the partner quits, the mission dies. The ones who succeed are the ones who decide, I'm doing this whether anyone joins me or not. I am doing this even if my family keeps eating pizza in front of me. I am doing this because I am the one who let myself get this way, and I am the only one who can fix it. The moment they stop blaming their slow metabolism or their busy schedule and start taking 100% responsibility for every morsel of food that enters their mouth, the weight starts to drop. The excuse was the only thing holding the fat in place. The same is true for the person building a side hustle or the person learning a new craft. The transformation begins the moment the excuses end. The freedom of no blame. There is a strange, dark comfort in blame. It allows you to feel like a good person who just had bad luck. But that comfort is a prison. It keeps you small. When you eliminate excuses, you lose that comfort, but you gain freedom. If you are the cause of your problems, you are the solution. That means your future is entirely in your hands. You aren't waiting for a politician to change the laws. You aren't waiting for the market to pick up. You aren't waiting for your boss to notice your hard work. You are the master of your own destiny. You can work harder, you can learn more, you can pivot, and you can persist. This is the ultimate power. It is the power of the self-reliant individual. Conclusion. Burn the bridges of if and when. To truly master the strength of doing things alone, you must go on an excuse fast. For the next 30 days, eliminate the words if and when from your vocabulary regarding your goals. I'll start when I have more money. I'd be better if I had more support. Replace them with I am. I'm starting with what I have. I'm finding a way despite the lack of support. Accept that your current situation is the result of your past actions, and your future situation will be the result of your current actions. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to do the push-ups for you. No one is going to write the pages for you. This realization shouldn't make you feel sad. It should make you feel powerful. The weight of responsibility is actually the gravity that keeps you grounded and moving forward. When you stand alone, you stand tall. You realize that you have everything you need within you to build the life you want. You don't need a team to take a step. You don't need a crowd to take a stand. No support. No excuses. Just action. The road is open. The responsibility is yours. Start walking. Chapter 9. Discipline thrives in isolation. The social erosion of willpower. We often think of discipline as an internal struggle, a battle between our higher self and our primal urges. And while that is true, we rarely acknowledge how much of our discipline is actually eroded by external social friction. Discipline is the ability to maintain a consistent direction in the face of changing winds. But when you are constantly surrounded by people, those winds are not just your own moods. They are the moods, schedules, and distractions of everyone around you. You wake up with a plan to work, but a friend calls with a crisis. You intend to eat healthy, but a colleague brings donuts to the office. You plan to sleep early, but a social obligation keeps you out until midnight. In a social setting, your discipline is constantly being taxed. Every time you have to say no to someone else, you use up a bit of your finite willpower. But when you move into isolation, that social tax is eliminated. Alone is where discipline becomes identity. In the quiet of your own company, discipline stops being a series of difficult numbers and starts being a series of powerful yeses. In isolation, you aren't fighting the world to stay on track. You are simply existing in the track you have built for yourself. The architect of environment. One of the greatest secrets of high achievers is that they don't rely on willpower alone. They rely on environment design. They understand that it is much easier to be disciplined in a room where there are no distractions than in a room where temptation is staring them in the face. When you are alone, you are the absolute architect of your environment. You control the lighting, the sound, the accessibility of your tools, and the absence of your distractions. You can design a temple of output. In an office or a shared living space, you are at the mercy of the average environment. There is noise you didn't choose, conversations you don't need to hear, and a general energy of busyness that is often mistaken for productivity. Isolation allows you to remove the static. It allows you to create a space where the path of least resistance is the path of progress. If you want to read more, and you are alone, you can leave books on every surface. If you want to train, you can have your equipment ready in the middle of the room. Without the need to keep appearances for others, you can make your life as functional and disciplined as you want. The purity of the routine. Discipline is built on the back of routine. A routine is a series of automated decisions that move you toward your goal. The more decisions you can automate, the more mental energy you have for the actual work. In isolation, routines become sacred. Because there is no one to interrupt the flow, you can find a rhythm that is uniquely yours. You can discover when your brain is naturally the sharpest, whether that's at 4 a.m. or 11 p.m., and you can build your world around that peak. When you are alone, the friction of coordination disappears. You don't have to wait for someone else to be ready to eat, to leave, or to start. You move from task to task with the precision of a machine. This fluidity is where deep work happens. This is where hours feel like minutes because you are in a state of total immersion. Isolation provides the buffer required for this immersion to take place. It takes the average human brain about 23 minutes to fully refocus after an interruption. In a social environment, you might be interrupted every 20 minutes, meaning you never reach your full cognitive potential. In isolation, you can stay in the deep zone for 5, 6, or 8 hours at a time. From performance to identity, there is a profound difference between performing discipline and being disciplined. When we are around others, we often act disciplined because we want to be perceived as hardworking or successful. We hit the gym because we want people to see us there. We stay late at the office so the boss sees our car in the lot. This is performative discipline. The problem with it is that it only lasts as long as the audience is watching. The moment the audience goes home, the discipline collapses. But when you are alone, there is no audience. If you wake up at 5 a.m. to study, no one is there to give you a like. If you do the extra set of repetitions in your basement gym, no one is there to applaud. This is where the magic happens. When you do the work in total isolation, you aren't doing it for the image of success. You are doing it for the result of success. You are doing it because it is who you are. This is how discipline transitions from a chore into an identity. When you can hold yourself to a high standard when you are completely alone, you have achieved the highest form of human maturity. You have become your own master. You are no longer a child who needs a parent, the boss, the coach, the crowd to watch over you. You are a self-governing entity, the laboratory of habit. Isolation is the best place to install new habits. When you are trying to change your life, let's say you want to stop drinking, start a meditation practice, or learn a difficult new skill, your old social circle is often your biggest obstacle. They know the old you and they subconsciously or consciously pull you back into those old patterns. By stepping into isolation, what many call monk mode, you give yourself the space to rewire your brain without interference. You can experiment with different routines. You can fail and restart without the shame of being seen. Think of the daily 5 non-negotiable tasks you do every single day. In isolation, these 5 tasks become your religion. 1 hour of reading, 1 hour of physical training, 4 hours of deep work on your craft, 30 minutes of reflection, prepping for the next day. When you do this for 30, 60, or 90 days in isolation, these habits become hard-coded into your nervous system. By the time you return to the social world, these habits are so strong that the social wind can no longer blow you off course. You didn't just try a new habit, you became it. The master's path, historical precedents. If you look at the greatest thinkers and creators in history, almost all of them had a period of strategic isolation. Isaac Newton did his most revolutionary work on calculus, optics, and gravity while in isolation during the Great Plague of London. Nikola Tesla was famous for his solitary life, claiming that the mind is sharper and keener in seclusion and uninterrupted solitude. Maya Angelou used to rent a hotel room just to write, removing all family photos and distractions so she could face the work alone. Bill Gates is known for his Think Weeks, where he goes into a cabin in the woods alone with nothing but books and his thoughts. These giants didn't isolate because they were antisocial. They isolated because they understood that greatness requires a level of focus that a crowd cannot provide. They knew that to move the world, they first had to move away from it. They used isolation as a force multiplier for their discipline. The battle with the internal distractor. Isolation is not a magic pill. In fact, when you remove all external distractions, you are left with the most dangerous distractor of all, your own mind. In the beginning, isolation is uncomfortable. Without the noise of others, you will hear the loud voice of your own laziness. You will feel the urge to check your phone, to clean the house, to do anything other than the difficult work. This is the final boss of discipline. When you are in a group, you can blame the group for your lack of focus. But when you are alone, you have to admit that you are the one holding yourself back. Staying in that room, facing that urge, and choosing the work anyway is how you build unbreakable discipline. Once you have defeated the internal distractor in isolation, you are invincible in the world. If you can stay disciplined when it's just you and the blank page, you can stay disciplined anywhere. Designing your isolation pockets. You may not be able to go live in a cabin for 6 months, but you can build isolation pockets into your life. This is the practical application of this chapter. The golden hours, the 2 hours before the world wakes up or the 2 hours after the world goes to sleep. This is artificial isolation. The emails aren't coming in, the house is quiet, and the social pressure is zero. Use these hours for your most difficult discipline. Digital isolation. Your phone is a portal that allows the crowd into your private space. When you are working, your phone shouldn't just be on silent. It should be in another room. Close the portal. The solo retreat. Once a month or once a quarter, spend 24 to 48 hours completely alone. No social media, no friends, no family. Use this time to reset your discipline and audit your goals. The closed door policy. Learn to set boundaries. Tell the people in your life, between these hours, I do not exist. This isn't being rude, it's being a professional with your own life. The freedom of structure. People often think that discipline and isolation are restrictive. They think it sounds like a prison. But the paradox of life is that structure is freedom. The person who has no discipline is a slave to their moods, their appetites, and the whims of the crowd. They are free to do whatever they want, but they are never free to achieve what they want. The person who embraces the structure of isolation is free from the tyranny of the trivial. They are free from the need for approval. They are free from the chaos of a reactive life. They have built a container for their potential, and within that container, they can grow as large as they want. Conclusion: the quiet strength. Discipline is not a loud, aggressive act. It is a quiet, repetitive act. It is the steady drip of water that eventually carves through solid rock. And that drip is loudest in the silence. When you are alone, you learn that you don't need a reason to be disciplined. You don't need a deadline. You don't need a boss. You do it because it is the way you have chosen to live. Embrace the isolation. Don't see it as a void to be filled. See it as a space to be utilized. In the quiet, your routines will sharpen. Your habits will harden. Your identity will transform. The world will try to pull you back into the noise. It will call your isolation loneliness and your discipline obsession. Let them. They don't see what you see. They don't know the strength that comes from being the only person in the room and being perfectly okay with that. Alone is where discipline becomes identity. Build yourself in the dark. Hone your craft in the quiet. When you finally emerge, you won't have to try to be disciplined anymore. You will simply walk with the weight of a person who has mastered themselves. Chapter 10. The strongest people walk alone first. The geometry of greatness. If you look at the structure of a mountain, you will notice a simple geometric truth. The base is vast and crowded, but the peak is narrow and solitary. Most people spend their lives at the base. It is comfortable there. The air is thick, the resources are shared, and there is always someone to talk to. But as you begin to climb, as you pursue a higher version of yourself, a larger vision, or a more disciplined life, the path naturally narrows. As the path narrows, people drop off. Some lack the stamina. Some lack the vision. Some are simply terrified of the thinning air. Eventually, you reach a point where the path is only wide enough for one set of footprints. This is the moment of truth. Most people, when they realize they are walking alone, turn back. They assume they've taken a wrong turn. They think, if this were the right way, surely there would be others here with me. But the strongest among us understand the opposite truth. Every great path begins as a lonely road. Walking alone isn't a sign that you are lost. It is a sign that you have left the herd behind. It is the prerequisite for leadership, innovation, and mastery. You cannot lead a path that you haven't first trodden with your own 2 feet, in the dark, without a map. The myth of the joint venture. We are obsessed with the idea of finding our tribe or building a team. And while teams are necessary for scaling, they are almost never there for the inception. Every revolution in human history, whether it was a scientific breakthrough, a new philosophy, or a billion-dollar company, started in the mind of a single person who was willing to be wrong alone for a very long time. The strongest people are those who can hold a vision in their mind when the rest of the world sees nothing. They are the ones who can stand in a room of skeptics and not flinch. This strength is not born from arrogance, it is born from the solitary phase. Think of the early days of any pioneer. They didn't start with a committee. They started with a conviction. They had to walk the road alone first to prove it was a road. Only after they reached a destination, only after they produced a result, did the crowd decide that they wanted to follow. If you are waiting for a crowd to join you before you start, you aren't a leader. You're a follower waiting for a leader who hasn't shown up yet. The doubt threshold. When you walk alone, you will eventually hit what I call the doubt threshold. This is the point where the initial excitement of your project has worn off, the results haven't shown up yet, and the silence of your solitude begins to feel heavy. In this phase, your mind will play tricks on you. It will tell you that you are wasting your time. It will point to your friends who are having fun and living life while you are grinding in the dark. It will tell you that you are being obsessive or antisocial. This is the ultimate test of the human spirit. This is where the strong are separated from the wishers. The strongest people use this doubt as fuel. They realize that if the path were easy and crowded, the reward at the end wouldn't be worth having. They understand that the loneliness they feel is actually the sensation of their old, weak self being stripped away. They keep walking, not because they have a guarantee of success, but because they have a commitment to their own potential. The architecture of the vanguard. In military terms, the vanguard is the foremost part of an advancing army. They are the ones who hit the unknown territory first. They take the most risk, they face the most uncertainty, and they have the least support. You must become the vanguard of your own life. To create something new, you must be willing to exist in a state of no man's land. You must be willing to be the person who stays up late studying while others sleep. You must be willing to be the person who saves money while others spend. You must be willing to be the person who speaks a truth that others are too afraid to acknowledge. This solitary stance is what builds the density of your character. When you eventually become successful, when you finally reach that peak, you will be heavy with experience. You will have a gravitational pull. People will wonder how you became so unshakable, not realizing that your stability was forged in the years you spent walking alone, where you had no one to lean on but yourself. The paradox of influence. There is a strange paradox in human nature. The more you need people, the less they respect you. But the more you prove you can walk alone, the more they want to follow you. Independence is the most attractive trait a human being can possess. When you are perfectly content doing things alone, when you don't need the constant check-in of a social group, you radiate a sense of power. You are a fixed point in a world of moving shadows. People are naturally drawn to fixed points. They want to be around someone who knows where they are going. But you can only become a fixed point by spending time in the vacuum. You have to prove to yourself that your internal compass works when there are no external landmarks. If you can stay true to your values, your routine, and your vision when you are alone, you will be able to lead others with ease. Your leadership will be authentic because it wasn't learned from a book. It was earned in the silence. The garage phase of every breakthrough. Every great company has a garage phase. Every great artist has a blue period. Every great athlete has a rehab phase or a development phase. These are all euphemisms for the lonely road. During these phases, there is no glory. There are no cameras. There is just the work. The strongest people are those who can maintain their intensity during this phase. They don't need a like to keep going. They don't need a share to feel validated. They understand that the garage phase is where the actual magic happens. It's where the bugs are worked out. It's where the skills are honed. It's where the weakness is burned off. If you are in your garage phase right now, if you are working on a dream that no one else sees, do not rush to leave it. This is the most important time of your life. This is where you are building the strength of one. This is where you are becoming a person who can walk through fire and not get burned. The loneliness of the first. If you are the first in your family to try to build wealth, the first in your circle to get sober, or the first among your peers to chase a radical dream, you will be lonely. Your old circle will not understand you. They will try to guilt you back into the herd. They will call you different. Accept this. Embrace it. Being different is the only way to get different results. If you do what everyone else is doing, you will get what everyone else has. And if you look at the average person, stressed, in debt, unhealthy, and distracted, you realize that average is a tragedy. Walking alone is the only escape from the tragedy of the average. It is the only way to break the generational cycles that have kept your bloodline or your social circle stuck. You are the sacrifice that leads to the breakthrough. Every great path begins as a lonely road. The final transformation, from solo to sovereign. As we reach the end of this journey, it is time to look at the final transformation. Doing things alone starts as a necessity. You do it because you have no choice. Then, it becomes a discipline. You do it because it makes you better. Finally, it becomes a state of sovereignty. Sovereignty is the state where you are the absolute ruler of your own life. You are no longer lonely when you are alone. You are present. You have found the strength of one. You have realized that you are a complete ecosystem. When you reach this state, you can engage with the world on your own terms. You can have friends, you can have a partner, and you can have a team, but you don't need them to be okay. Your happiness is not a hostage to their behavior. Your progress is not a slave to their schedule. This is true freedom. This is the ultimate strength. The road ahead. The world is waiting for you to stop waiting. It is waiting for you to stop checking your phone for permission. It is waiting for you to stop explaining your vision to people who haven't even opened their eyes. It is waiting for you to take that first, terrifying, solitary step. Yes, it will be quiet. Yes, there will be moments when you wonder if you're crazy. Yes, you will miss the comfort of the crowd. But keep walking. Walk through the doubt. Walk through the silence. Walk through the boredom. On the other side of that lonely road is a version of you that is unbreakable. A version of you that has no excuses. A version of you that has built a life out of raw willpower and silent execution. The crowd stays at the bottom. The strong climb the peak. The path is narrow. The air is thin. But the view from the top is only visible to those who are willing to walk the road alone. Conclusion. The strength of doing things alone. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you take nothing else from this book, take this: you are enough. You have the tools within you to start, to build, and to finish. You don't need a partner to have a purpose. You don't need a crowd to have a character. You don't need a yes from the world to say yes to yourself. Go out today and do one thing alone that you've been waiting for someone else to join you on. Start the business. Go to the gym. Take the trip. Write the page. Feel the strength that comes from that single act of independence. And then do it again tomorrow. And the day after that. Until the silence no longer scares you. Until the solitude becomes your sanctuary. Until your results make so much noise that the world finally stops and asks you how you did it. And when they ask, you can just smile, look back at the long, empty road behind you, and tell them the truth. I did it because I was willing to walk alone. The strength of doing things alone. Finish.